It was common knowledge the entire station resented the night shifts, but obviously the job had to be done. Overall, the small town of Holston had an exceptionally low crime rate, and especially at night, the shifts dragged. The only thing keeping Camille awake in the early hours of the morning was the lingering aftertaste of the cappuccino she had purchased on her way into the station the night before. The same drink which was often forgotten about, and long since cold by the time she remembered about it. Not to mention the fact she hadn't yet received a cup with her name spelt correctly on it. The station had only just gotten over the novelty of calling her Camille the Camel, due to the previous mishap with the misspelling on the outer sleeve of the beverage. One thing which made the late nights and early mornings slightly more bearable was sharing the empty building with Damon Harris, who was more or less the clown of the force, who never failed to make people laugh, whether he was trying to be funny or not. His humour alone, however, was in no way good enough to make up for his blatant laziness, oftentimes isolating himself in other rooms away from watchful eyes, insisting he worked better in silence, when in reality it was the perfect environment for an extended nap, spanning anywhere between 2 hours and 4.5 hours. It was around 5:30 that morning before Camille eventually heard movement from the upper floor. As she pushed herself away from her desk with a yawn, inhaling the faint scent of her perfume still in the air, suddenly the sound of heavy footsteps making their way down the stairs was followed by the man himself. It had been the first time she had seen him for at least 3 hours, but she knew exactly why that was.
Nice of you to make an appearance, Damon,
she said, her eyes drifting off in his direction as he sluggishly reached the bottom of the stairs, spying a familiar sight in his grasp, a pizza box.
What's that?
He looked down at the box blankly, as he saw the puzzled look on her face.
Pepperoni?
She watched as he opened the grease-soaked lid of the box and picked up a slice of the cheesy dough.
It's 5:30 in the morning. Where did you even get that? And why didn't you offer me any?
Wandering across the room, he launched the pizza slice into the bin, followed by the remainder of the box before returning his attention back to her.
It's not mine. I found it upstairs. I thought Tom's desk was due a clean. Fuck knows how long it's been there for.
Sounds delicious,
she said, managing a slight smile as she massaged her forehead, a headache beginning to surface from staring at the bright screen of her computer for so long. Peering at the clock on the wall above the ancient coffee machine, she watched the seconds tick by before asking the question she already knew the answer to.
You've not just been cleaning Tom's desk since 1:30. What have you been doing?
Damon was a lot of things, but he liked to believe he wasn't stupid. He knew Camille had already caught on to his tired tendencies, but instead of denying his obvious intentions, he often tried to change the subject to avoid confrontation.
I'm sorry, I've been busy. Do you want a coffee?
He asked, his finger lingering over the button on the coffee machine as he waited for her to reply.
Latte, maybe?
Not willing to let his genius plan of distraction by caffeine deflect her question, she pushed herself up from the desk and made her way towards him, slapping his hand away from the coffee machine before pressing the button herself, watching the steady stream of bitter liquid trickle into the mug below.
You've been asleep, haven't you? While I was doing all the work. Again.
She looked up at him, arms folded with a smug look on her face.
You're not getting away with it this time.
His usual grin dropped slightly, mistaking her threats as flirting. He cocked an eyebrow, still rubbing his hand from the sudden strike from Camille.
Oh, you gonna tell on me?
Rolling her eyes before retrieving the mug after the last few drips had ceased, she watched Damon shift his attention onto making his usual 6 a.m. coffee. Before she had the chance to reply, Damon began chanting out his overused mimicking, which often got him in trouble when he was overheard by other members of the team.
Jennifer, I've been doing all the work while Damon has been slacking off. Boo! My name's Camille, the perfect professional princess.
Halfway through his over-enthusiastic display of immaturity, Camille had caught sight of a familiar yet utterly terrifying creature crawling its way across the office's busy tartan carpet. Big Jude, or Juju as the majority of the station referred to her as, due to her ability to magically disappear and reappear in the most bizarre of places, was the station's resident Mexican red-knee tarantula. Pathologist Dylan Halston never seen the issue with Juju's frequent ventures around the station. insisting she was merely stretching her legs after being stuck in her enclosure downstairs in the morgue, but everyone else was utterly horrified at the sight of her lurking silently when she did reveal herself. Upon the sight of Juju, Camille shuffled herself silently to the other side of the room while Damon was preoccupied, although after a few seconds he noticed that she had scuttled away to a considerable distance.
What are you doing?
She sipped the coffee from her mug smugly as she watched his confusion grow.
Waiting for chaos to unfold.
A quick glance to the floor from Camille caused him to turn, locking his eyes with the beady little eyes of the creature, delicately and silently flexing its legs. It was probably for the best he hadn't yet picked up his mug from beneath the coffee machine, as he more or less threw his whole body into the records cabinet in a desperate attempt to get away from Jude. Unfortunately for both Camille and Damon, they hadn't heard Jennifer enter the building, rolling her eyes with a heavy sigh as she made her way down the hall, the clattering of metal doors of the records cabinet ricocheting around the wall as her patience was wearing even thinner than usual, if that was even possible. Swinging open the door, her owl-like eyes locked onto the pair, as a second sigh was repelled from her throat. "Oh, for God's sake! Why is it every time I come in here, it's like a bloody playground?" Big Jude slowly crept her way across the carpet, barely a foot away from Jennifer, but her anger seemed to be enough to cancel out all her fear that she had of Juju. Before the creature even had a chance to consider its master vanishing act this time, Jennifer swiped a plastic tray from her desk, tipping out the paperwork from within and placing it gently over the top of Jude. "You can come out now, Damon." His eyes rapidly searched the floor for Juju as he eventually stepped out of the cabinet, clutching a file as he tried to play off his fear.
I was looking for a file.
Quickly snatching the case file from his grasp, Camille's eyes lit up as a menacing grin spread across her face at how brilliant the situation was unfolding. She flicked open the first page of information, knowing exactly which file he had mistakenly grabbed.
Yes. Mr. Grotley, 87, caught publicly masturbating in the internet cafe on Millen Street at 9:47 in the morning, back in March 2017.
Jennifer stood, arms folded, with a disapproving look on her face. Was that a case which particularly piqued your interest, Damon? His eyes drifted to Camille as a desperate plea for assistance, something which by her sinister smile didn't seem to be available. He may not have been quick when it came to his actual workload, but when it came to trying to get himself out of difficult situations, his mind worked overtime. Although the speed of his mouth was often quicker than the time taken for his brain to process these thoughts, oftentimes landing him in stickier situations.
I actually wanted to check the system to see if you'd been up to any other, mischief lately.
Camille seized the opportunity to dig an even bigger hole for him as payback for his antics. She smirked again, seeing him look increasingly more uncomfortable by the second.
And why would you want to know that?
The cogs began to turn again as he tried to elaborate on his lie to save him from the embarrassment of the fact that he was utterly terrified of the station's 8-legged inhabitant.
I saw him in town the other day, at the corner shop. I just wondered what he was up to these days.
As Jennifer let out a sigh and turned her back, he felt as if his lies had actually worked. However, as she turned back to face him, the realisation hit him that Jennifer could literally see through everything. "All right. Was he buying heartburn relief for that heart attack that killed him 3 years ago?" Camille curled her lip inward, trying her best not to laugh as Damon stood there in silence, unable to answer her question. The door to the main office opened once again. This time it was Tom Bracey, accompanied by Tara Vendier, both police constables of the Holston Police Service. By their shifty movements into the room, Camille could tell both of them were most likely listening on the other side of the door before entering.
"I hope we're not interrupting something,"
Tom said, removing his jacket and hanging it onto the back of his chair by his desk, as he proceeded to turn on the computer monitors around the room. The grin remained on Camille's face the entire time, and stayed there, as she once again turned to face Damon.
Nah. Damon was just reading about a dead man's erection.
Spying the coffee left by Damon under the coffee machine, Tara made her way across the room. Clearly she was suffering from a headache brought on by one of her late-night wine and movie nights.
"You lot are grim. I need a coffee, then I'm going upstairs to sit in the dark for a while."
Before Damon had the chance to retort about his coffee, Tara swiped it. Jennifer rolled her eyes once again as another sigh left her lips. Ridiculous. She turned once again, leaving the room. No one spoke as they listened to the click of her heels echo down the hallway until the sound of the door of her office closing signalled that she was out of earshot. They stood in silence for a couple of seconds before Camille began to dig her car keys from her cardigan pocket.
Well, on that note, I'm going to head off.
Damon nodded in agreement, just as eager to get home and continue his sleep in the comfort of his own bed. Although before he could leave, he couldn't help allowing his menacing side to rear its ugly head once again. He gestured to the tray covering Jude as he slowly wandered towards the door.
Yeah, Tom, can you do me a favour and pick up that tray, will you? Camille dropped it on the floor earlier.
Before Camille could warn him, he sighed heavily, bending down to retrieve it.
Can't even clean up after yourselves. Nothing new there.
They watched wide-eyed, expecting chaos to once again fill the room, although that was short-lived, as the tray was lifted, revealing nothing but carpet beneath. Juju had once again worked her magic and disappeared without a trace.